Hello, welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, and welcome to episode 2 of our Star Wars month. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-hosts Tayte in the Hour and George Aldridge, for our round-table discussion of everything involving our favourite galaxy far, far away. So, at this point of recording, we're about 8 days away from the release of The Force Awakens, and we're celebrating the release of that film with an entire month dedicated to Star Wars. As this is our second episode, we'll be continuing our reviews of the prequels. So today we'll be reviewing Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, once again directed and written by George Lucas. As I said in our previous review, the prequels have pretty much been reviewed to death on the internet. Red Letter Media is probably the best example of that. So we're going to keep it like we did with the first one, a bit more personal, our personal experiences surrounding Attack of the Clones and the release of it and everything like that. So we were sort of talking about this a little bit before we hit record, but our first time seeing it, we all pretty much struggled to remember the eventuality when we saw this one. Like, Phantom Menace was definitely lodged in our mind because that was, as I said, like my first intro into Star Wars. But this one, it's kind of a blur, to be honest.
Yeah, I think with Attack of the Clones, when I first saw it, it was obviously at the cinema, and I don't remember seeing the film like I do with the sort of eventually one of the repeats of Phantom Menace. I just remember going to the cinema, if that makes sense. I only saw it at the cinema once, and then I got the DVD at Christmas, and back then, you know, DVD was massive new, which was a shame. But I just can't really remember much about seeing it for the first time, which is strange, because I can remember episode 3, and I remember bits of 1, not really the old ones, but that's because they were videos and they were more etched as childhood, but at the age of like 6, I thought I'd remember it. I remember a lot of films, but just not that one.
Yeah.
How about you, Tate?
Well, I kind of watched this in cinema. It was probably the first Star Wars film I actually saw in cinema, because the other one I just kind of didn't really see, but I remember it distinctively being a very silly film. Like, in my head when I was a kid, I was like, oh, this film, it's so silly. And I think the first time watching it through, I didn't realise it was Star Wars. And
really?
I genuinely was completely clueless to it, because I think I'd gone to the toilet for the first 5 minutes. And my parents were like, oh, we're taking you to a film. I'm like, okay. And I was completely clueless through like the first 5 minutes. I was like, at the end I was like, oh cool, what was the film called again? They're like, it was the new Star Wars film. I'm like, oh, this was Star Wars. And I'd already seen the previous films, and I'd never really clicked in my head the link, even though they had lightsabers in a very similar universe.
Well, can we just start by this? What do you guys think of the title, Attack of the Clones? Because to me, it's probably the most silliest one out of all 6 titles.
And The Force Awakens isn't a silly title?
Well, that is a bit... I've sort of got used to that one with all the branding and everything, but Attack of the Clones, I don't know, it sounds very sort of sci-fi B-movie-esque, doesn't it, a little bit? I know it's not much of a stretch from The Empire Strikes Back, I guess, but I don't know, the title to me just sounds a little silly. And it's debatable as well, isn't it? Because I don't think the clones actually attack in it.
They could have gone with, Rebellion of the Clones, or anything. Anything sounds better than Attack of the Clones, to be honest.
Yeah.
The clones didn't have heavily featured in it. Really?
Well, that's the thing. They kind of come in at the end, just more like the Siege of Geonosis. That's the little clone standpoint. It should have been renamed to Star Wars Episode 2. Pick up lines with sand.
oh yeah, we'll get onto that much more later.
Attack of the Sand.
Well, technically, Attack of the Sun people would have probably actually done more to the plot than the clones did. The clones was more or less a throwback to, haha, these are the stormtroopers, which I didn't really clock on to episode 3 because I was too young to realise. But if they'd have said that when I was waiting for episode 2, I'd have been like, oh, okay.
Hey, I didn't even clock on to the fact it was Star Wars whilst watching it, so...
But I'm trying to think the first time I saw it. I remember, like you said, George, just sort of just going to the cinema on a whim, just sitting down, and it didn't really have any of that excitement or hype, I don't think, that most of the other Star Wars films did. I mean, Phantom Menace definitely did, because it was the first one of the prequels, and to a certain extent Revenge of the Sith did as well, because that was going to be the film that was going to bridge the old, the new to the old. But this one was just sort of that awkward middle film. in all honesty, I think this is probably my least favourite one out of the prequels, although I think that it definitely accomplishes more in terms of plot than Phantom Menace does. In that, you get the clones, you get sort of the setup with Padme and Anakin, although it's done well, we'll talk about that much more later, but you actually get the clones and leading into the stormtroopers, and you actually get to see the Clone Wars start in this movie, although I think it does take place a little too late in the film. I would have liked to have seen a bit more of that. Um, but yeah, so I sort of went to see this film, and even as a kid, like when I got it on video, this was probably one I watched the least amount of times. If I did, I'd probably just fast forward it to Geonosis, because to me, again, this film is very plodding, it's very boring, there's lots of boring exposition scenes, and to be honest, like I said this in the last one, but I thought Phantom Menace had a pretty good blend of CGI and live action stuff. This is where you really see George Lucas's digital technology really taking the forefront. You've got green screen backgrounds everywhere. You've got a lot more CGI aliens and ships and things like that. And this was the one that I thought looked the most plasticky out of the three prequels. I don't know if you guys thought anything about that or.
Yeah, I'll always remember when I was younger. I remember seeing a TV advert, and it was one of the papers. You get the sort of free DVDs. And as soon as do of Attack of the Clones, I just remember this shot of Anakin on the land speeder going to save, attempting to save his mum. And I just remember, like, even at a young age, right, couldn't tell if it was like animated or if it was like real. And at the age of 6, if you're clocking on that something, is CGI, and all it is a close up of him, and you guys know the shot when he's just speeding away.
Yeah.
And it was, very strange back then. Whereas at least you're right, of Episode 1 to some degree, they did build a fair few amount of sets. In all honesty, whereas for this one, I can't really actually think of any sets they would have built. I mean, there's the stuff on Tatooine, but then again, I think that's just the original sets from the 70s that they probably just went back to.
Yeah. The only bit that comes to mind in real locations was I think they shot it in Italy, was the stuff on Naboo. The palace with the water and the mountains in the background. I think that was real locations, and to be honest, that probably looks the nicest set out of the entire film. So yeah, we've got another section here like when our opinions have changed on it, but I don't think my opinions have really changed. It's weird to describe because the film starts out with very sort of mundane political dialogue again. I mean, the opening shot, you're expecting something exciting in Star Wars, and thankfully when we get to Episode 3, we get that epic shot of the Separatists battling the clones in the space battle. But with this one, it's a very slow sort of tracking shot of Padme's ship coming into land, and then it explodes, and it doesn't grip you from the start of it. And then it's sort of action set piece after action set piece, really. You get sort of Obi-Wan going off doing his thing, and then you get the Coruscant chase, and then you get the droid factory chase, and there's just lots of sort of little action scenes just thrown in all the way through without much structure, really.
Yeah, and going back to the way it was kind of phrased with the sort of move along set pieces, what's changed with me is that when I was younger, I think I said it in the Phantom Menace one, that I used to watch the DVD, the start of the Droid Factory, and there then. So the only thing that's changed is that I'd actually watch the full film now. I haven't actually seen it in 2 years. I'm seeing it next Wednesday, I think, before Episode 7, which is going to be hilarious. And then the one thing I kind of evolved on was that obviously when you get to the age when you clock on that Boba Fett's this cult character.
Yeah.
I really like the Jango Fett stuff, and it's quite controversial, but I think Jango Fett accomplishes more to the saga than Boba Fett does. And I think growing older, one of the only things I've really liked about it is the sort of the Jango Fett stuff, that he's actually the clones and that kind of cool stuff. And I always like the fact he was Kiwi. I know a lot of people don't like the fact they changed it. Fair enough if they grew up with a voice and they changed it, but it was a lot more menacing, I think, what they did. But I've always liked the Jango Fett stuff. But what's really changed is that I'd always like this the least of the 6, and I still do, and it's so hard to get through because it's just a horrifically forced love triangle.
I have to say, like, when I was rewatching this a couple of weeks ago, I took a break. I never take breaks in films. I usually plow through them. Like, I plowed through the Twilight entire, all 4 films, no break, and I had to pause in this film and actually hold myself for a minute, go downstairs, get a drink, like, think about my life and what I'm doing with it for a couple of minutes, come back upstairs, watch an hour's worth of YouTube before coming back and finishing the film. Because I just needed to get my mind completely away from it. It was completely destroying my mind.
When you say you went down to get a drink, was it a stiff drink by any chance, just to get through the last hour? I know,
may have
George,
gone
last time
through
you had JD.
a couple of bottles of vodka.
It helps.
I
It really
can't
does help.
actually remember to this day what the end of the film is. No, I'm joking.
So, what do you really want to hit next? You want to sort of get more into the characters now, and then that's going to lend on to what you were just talking about, Tate, with the
Can I
god-awful...
quickly say, once again, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ewan McGregor's performance basically is the only thing bearable in this film. There's a couple of other things, but he is the only thing that is solid for all three films in this franchise.
And he's kind of got his beard, although he went for the downside, the switcheroo of the hairstyles, which I don't get to this day. He didn't need to grow his hair, and then they just kind of swap it for episode 3. It's kind of that really random Harry Potter film where they all grew long hair.
Yeah.
Don't get it.
Oh, yeah,
Don't
that
get
was
it.
the fourth one, wasn't it? I think, yeah. And then it switches to Anakin in the third one because he's got to look all evil and menacing and have long, bedraggled hair, yeah. But no, I completely agree with that, and you can really see Ewan McGregor trying. I think he hits the spotlight more in that scene in episode 3, which we'll talk about in our next review on Mustafar. But yeah, he's great throughout. It's unfortunate he doesn't get great material to work with, like that whole scene where he goes to that 50s diner, Dexter Jetster, and he's like hugging that really awful just
CGI thing.
Yeah. The effects of that really haven't held up well, and to be honest, I think when I saw it for the first time, I didn't think they looked that great either, which is a shame because there are moments in this where the effects do look really good. But okay, we've talked about the good acting in this. Now let's get on to the bad, which is pretty much everyone else.
Actually, no.
Shall we
Hold on.
I have a cool character.
I have a good actor. Yeah. Do you want to go first? 'Cause it's probably the same person.
Well, mine's not an actor actually, so if you want to do yours.
Count
I'm
Dooku.
forgetting an obvious one. Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Christopher
I
Lee.
completely. Yeah.
Are you kidding? You forgot about him?
I did, yeah, because he's horrifically underutilized. He comes into it in like 3/4 of the way into the movie, and I was talking about this in Phantom Menace, where you have a great villain in Darth Maul, and obviously he's killed off at the end. I know he comes back in Clone Wars and everything, but in terms of the films, if you're just watching them, he's dead at the end of that movie. Yeah. And then you're introduced suddenly to a brand new villain who we've had no real build-up for. We get brief hints that he was good friends with Qui-Gon Jinn, he was once a Jedi, but besides that, we really don't get anything else. He's just sort of leader of the Separatists, he's just there, he has a red lightsaber, he's Christopher Lee, so he's awesome. But he's never that compelling villain, and so when you get to that final fight at the end, that lightsaber fight, that one feels completely tacked on.
Yeah.
Just because we need an ending lightsaber fight. There's no... Like, at least Darth Maul, you had the coolness factor to him, and he was very mysterious. Nothing against Christopher Lee at all, because he was a fantastic actor, but there's just really nothing to Dooku's character, and especially because he comes into it so late into the film. At that point, you just really don't care, because really the big villain up until that point was Jango Fett.
Yeah, and I think with Christopher Lee, it's a shame because obviously we're too young to know, but I'm going to go back to the casting announcement for episode 7, where Andy Serkis was the one name that really caught my attention more than anyone else. And if I was kind of at that age with the episode 2 stuff, I'd have been so intrigued by a Christopher Lee announcement because he's the perfect suit to Star Wars. I mean, if you actually just take the look of Count Dooku, he's got, he's Christopher Lee for a start, but then he's got this really cool bendy lightsaber, which I used to have, which was awesome. But then you're right, he's underused so bad, and it's such a shame because you know that he's done it so many times, he would have delivered a fantastic villain. And it's only a shame that in the Clone Wars you actually see a villain aside to Count Dooku, not Christopher Lee.
Yeah.
Which is something I would have liked to have seen, because what does he do? He kind of pokes Obi-Wan in the leg, and then he chops Anakin's arm off. That's literally all he does in the whole film. Yeah,
and then he's basically just there to have that fight with Yoda at the end. And it's a shame, and I think that is one of my biggest problems with the prequels in general, is that there's, aside from the Emperor, there's no really through-line villain in each of them. You have Darth Maul in the first one, you have Dooku in this one, and then you really get Grievous in the third one. There's no one consistent one, which I hope that Force Awakens rectifies, because I would love to see Kylo Ren sort of go through those 3 films, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with his character. Let's get on to Anakin now, because
one more.
Yeah.
There is a legend. His name is Poggle the Lesser.
Yes.
He has Tate.
Yes.
I can't do the voice. I really want to.
Yeah.
But
We all have a Poggle impression, I'm sure.
I don't know if you know the name, but it's the guy that when they're starting the games, he puts his hand up, and I really want to do the noise, but I can't.
Go
So
for it.
house
At
life,
least
I'm
try.
gonna-
Add it in.
I
Add
can't.
it in the edit.
I'll add it in afterwards. But
Yeah.
even if I can't pronounce it, I'm gonna add the real voice in because it's incredible, and it's just the subtitles. But I want to say what an absolute legend that guy is, and he designed the Death Star. That's one thing that they just added in for the hell of it.
Can we quickly do a thing where at the end of the video we will all have our own impressions separate from this recording?
Oh God. Possibly.
Maybe.
Yeah, he's the leader of the Geonosians, isn't he? Honestly, in all 6 films, that's my favourite alien language. It's brilliant, just the sounds and everything. And honestly, that scene in Episode 3 where Anakin's just sort of like wailing through the Separatists, Poggle probably gets the most depressing death because he just gets sliced in half, and you just see like 2 halves of his body just fall down. He is brilliant. I swear to God, he was played by like a fairly big actor. Like, didn't he play like an elf or something in Lord of the Rings? I swear to God, I heard that somewhere. I don't know if he did the voice for him, if he did some kind of motion capture or like movement for him or stand-in, I'm not sure, but I heard that rumour a while back. But yeah, he's great, and he's in Clone Wars as well, and I love his episodes.
I have seen I'm looking for the name, I can't find it. However, there is a 10-hour loop of Poggle the Lesser speaking Geonosian on YouTube.
Yes! You're going to have to link me that after we finish this. Yeah, he's brilliant, and that again goes. We were saying this before we hit record. Attack of the Clones probably does have a collection of my favourite Star Wars sounds of all time. You've got the seismic charges with Slave One, Poggle. I'm counting him as well, and I know I'm forgetting another major. Jango Fett's guns as well. There's just so many in this film, and I know that doesn't make the film better, but that all goes to Ben Burtt, I believe, was the sound designer once again. He worked on the originals, worked on the prequels, and he's once again on fine form. Do you two have any other great actors in it, or shall we move on to the inevitable?
No. Get on with the bash.
Okay, Hayden Christensen. First off, I just want to say, I don't blame the guy. Like, if you're a new actor and someone offers you a role in a Star Wars movie as the lead actor in a Star Wars movie, you're gonna take it. You're just gonna do it.
Yeah.
Now, do I think he's a good actor? No, but I think it's a bit unfair at the level of criticism he keeps getting, because we mentioned this in Phantom Menace, but it ultimately comes down to George Lucas's writing and his direction. He's not an actor's director, and there's behind the scenes footage where he's really awkwardly trying to instruct Hayden, and Hayden's just looking at him like, what the hell are you chatting? He's just sort of like nodding his head and just going about it, and especially in the sort of environment where a lot of it is left to the imagination. You see shots of Ewan McGregor in the Camino kind of stuff where he's just walking and there's just blue screen and he's meant to be looking at stuff and forming responses to them. When you've got a trained actor like Ewan McGregor, he can do that stuff and he pulls it off well, but when you're a new upcoming actor, that's going to be a challenge for your first major film project. It's sort of like the Jake Lloyd thing and Ahmed Best thing we said about Phantom Menace. I don't think we should blame the actors, although I will admit that his delivery of some lines is questionable. Like, he goes into this role with a very sort of bratty, whiny teenager kind of thing, like a brooding teenager, and I really don't think that was the direction to take Anakin. Maybe that was the direction of George Lucas, or maybe that was just the way Hayden chose to play him, but that really wasn't the essence I wanted to see from Anakin when you hear that backstory in A New Hope when Alec Guinness refers to it.
Tate, you go for it. I'm just looking at one thing to say.
Oh man, how do we even start talking about his performance and how I have to blame him. I'm sorry, but as an actor, you've got to put all the effort into every project, and he was trying way too hard with the material given. I'm not sure whether that was the direction that was needed. I'm not sure. I highly doubt that George Lucas would have gone, okay, in this scene I need you to act really, really hard. Like, it genuinely shows. And as an actor, good or bad, I mean, if I was offered this role in Star Wars as a main character, I would say, look, I have no acting experience. I'm not as good. I do not take that part. As an actor, you've got to make the decision to pass it on if the thing isn't right. You've got to look past the paycheck. And yeah, sure, people will criticize you for it and stuff, but hey, at least the role goes to a better person. And it's not very good to piss off a fan base as big as Star Wars, and these prequels did that.
Yeah.
And part of it's got to go down to George Lucas, but completely deferring it away from like the actors and Hayden Christensen, it's no, you can't completely deny it away from him. He played a big part as one of the main characters who did not act as good as they could.
Yeah, and I think with Hayden Christensen, it's a shame because obviously he's new to it, and you're right, it's a bit of both. It's the actor and the director. One thing I was reading on episode 7 that apparently Daisy Ridley, her first day on set, it wasn't great, so J.J. Abrams took her aside, spoke to her, and then he said she was great after that. So obviously, you know, that's something George Lucas should have been doing, especially as a senior sort of person. But it's just one of them where it's the combination of the actor and director. And
did Hayden Christensen have a role before Star Wars?
I don't.
I'm
He was a
just
model, I
checking
think.
now.
I'm sure someone said he was a model, but
Oh god, they didn't hire a model, did they?
I think so. He was very pouty as well.
He was in a drama film called Life as a House, and then a lot of television films actually before that.
Okay.
So Star Wars was sort of his big break. I think Life as a House probably got him a bit of credibility, and then straight onto Star Wars.
Because something interesting from the new films is Daisy Ridley has had literally zero acting experience.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and I love how she referred to that as well. Like, wasn't it at the Comic-Con panel where they're listing their list of credits, and she was like, "I'm Daisy Ridley, and this is the first thing I've ever done."
Yeah.
One thing I want to say about Anakin is it's the delivery. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
here's a killer line. They're like animals, and I saw to them like animals. I hate them. And I'm quite sure in the film, when he says I hate them, he turns around and dramatically throws his lightsaber to the floor. Although he's been told that this weapon is his life.
He swishes his hair around. I hate them.
And then he pouts, like Zoolander 2 trailer.
No, it's the lip quiver. Before he says I hate them, I swear to God he gets like a lip quiver going on.
Come on, guys, we're bullying now. We can't do that.
Wait, someone's frozen it on his face. But it's just a shame. I mean, I prefer him a lot more in episode 3. In episode 2, he's too much of a whiny little bitch. In episode 3, he still whines, but at least there's some great stuff in 3.
He looks like a young Justin Timberlake. You don't really want the main character in Star Wars to be a young Justin Timberlake.
I know, and you know, Shimi probably died because she saw her son for the first time.
He's Canadian? Oh, well that explains it.
That's just harsh.
And we lost all of our Canadian subscribers.
Maybe Shimi died because she saw Anakin and goes, "Oh, he's a little bitch," and she just has enough.
She gets like a Marion Cotillard style death from Dark Knight Rises. Like she just gets like the full-on head slump and like tongue lolling out. But I'm gonna sort of defend Hayden's corner in this one because I think that scene where his mum dies is probably one of the strongest scenes in this film, and I think he plays that pretty well. I think both actors play that scene very well, actually. The stuff on Tatooine with Anakin, I think, is probably the strongest collection of scenes. That goes with Shmi's death. You've got the scene where he meets his stepbrother, isn't it? Owen, with his girlfriend Beru at the house. And then the scene that was drastically cut down is the scene where he kills the Sand People, which is the pivotal moment where you see that this is essentially Darth Vader at this point. He has got the capacity to become the Dark Lord of the Sith that we know he becomes, and he gets like 3 strikes in, is it, with Sand People, and then it cuts to the next scene with like Yoda sort of in meditation and knowing that Anakin's in pain. We should have saw that scene. It would have been very gruesome. It would probably have given it a 12 certificate like Revenge of the Sith did, but you know, that's what we're in the cinema for. We're here to see Anakin become Darth Vader and see this transition. And when you cut away, but you give us this about 10-minute scene on a droid factory conveyor belt with C-3PO flying around on like a bigger robot, that's not the stuff we care about. We want to see these pivotal character moments, and they're just completely glossed over.
Yeah, and it's a shame if the sort of Shimmy scene, because it's a great scene. It's just, I think, the start when he's, you know, escaping into the tent, no one hears. But I just remember when I was younger when he beheads it outside, and and then I just remember the head rolling off, and then it cuts, which is a shame. But it's even like that in episode 3 when. Would I have wanted him to see him kill younglings?
Yes,
Yes.
I would, because they're
actually
annoying
really
as hell.
And it's just that little kid like always used to pretend to be him and then just get obliterated with a lightsaber. Just imagine being in that room on like the Jedi CCTV.
Yeah. Oh, that kid though. I know we're not talking about Revenge of the Sith, but he is doing like some kind of Dick Van Dyke, Mary Poppins voice. He's like, Master Skywalker, there are too many of them. I was like, oh god, Anakin, just please kill them. You have my permission to just kill this entire room of children.
It's when the lightsaber zips out and he just steps back. He's like, shit.
It's like, crap, why was I the one who stepped forward?
It was in that moment where he knew he'd fucked up. Oh, but yeah, I'm not going to let you just hate on Hayden anymore. Let's get on to his counterpart. Let's talk about Natalie Portman in this movie.
I'm
as well.
sorry, but I just got to say quickly, the relationship between these two characters
It's wrong.
is very wrong.
Yeah,
like,
especially watching Phantom Menace.
Oh my god, like the age gap between these two, and the fact that she doesn't age and he does? What?
Yeah.
Oh.
What can I say? He likes them older.
I was going
guess.
to say, and then you can look at the script when it's like, I've thought about you every day. And it's like, this
Yeah.
was 10 years ago.
It's just like, Jesus Christ, it's like he banged Stacey's mum and then married her.
The kid hadn't even hit puberty and he was thinking about just getting with Natalie Portman. Yeah, it's really gross in this film. But Natalie Portman as well, a lot of people defend her. I mean, before this she'd done, obviously, Phantom Menace and then Leon the Professional. And she was great in that movie. And then since then we've seen her things, Black Swan. I'm trying desperately to think of anything else, and I really stuck with stuff. But the point is, we know that she can act. Again, getting actors to just say this dialogue, it's just... I was watching it again and I completely forgot some of the lines in it. It's where Anakin says, like, just being around her, it's intoxicating. And it's that scene where they're both sitting in front of the fireplace.
Oh,
She's
God.
got that weird leather corset thing on. I was just watching that scene. I just was face palming all the way through, like, oh my god.
And he won't
Someone
let her,
wrote this.
He won't let her cut like the apple with whatever it is, a pear with a fork. Instead, he's going to make it 10 times longer by bringing it over the Force and not even using his lightsaber for it.
Hey, that's foreplay, okay? And it worked. He'd set it up in the day, balcony walk, rolling around in the grass with those big CGI pig things, and then boom, he's in it with a pear.
And then he kidnaps her and takes her to Tatooine to meet his dead mother.
He just brings the corpse home with him. He just gets off the bike like nothing's wrong, just carrying the dead body.
It's like, where did he get the straps from though to like seal the sort of blanket thing? And like, he must have been really careful like driving. Like, I bike home with my phone out and stuff, and that was a nightmare. Like, try and look up. But imagine like having a dead body in front of you and you're trying to like look up where you're driving, but also checking that your mum's not fallen out.
That'd be brilliant. I'd have loved to have seen a scene where he just gets back on the bike and like Duel of the Fates starts up, and then it just abruptly cuts when the body falls off. He has to get off the bike, load it back up.
That sounds like something you'd see on South, like, what's it called, Family Guy or South Park.
Yeah, I could imagine South Park doing it.
Yeah.
If anyone watches it, they're currently doing Caitlyn Jenner and her running over everyone in every single episode.
Yes.
I really need to get on the South Park hype train. There's so many seasons.
Final episode tonight.
I know. Oh, but Chris, you'd love it. They're currently rehashing Terminator 2.
Are they?
Come with me if you want to live, and it's Officer Barbrady. I want to see South Park do Star Wars. They did the Disney buying the rights, which was brilliant a few years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The only one I saw was the Indiana Jones 4 one, which had a little bit of Star Wars in there with George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. But it'd be great to them to like go all out Star Wars.
They
but
definitely
yeah,
went
bringing
all out
it
in that
back
episode.
Mm.
yeah, bringing it back to Attack of the Clones, Natalie Portman. It is just the fault of the dialogue, in my opinion. Just the script is just terrible, and it's a shame because when you see, I rewatched Empire Strikes Back today. The connection between Leia and Han in that movie and how that develops throughout that film is brilliant. You've got that witty banter between the two. And, it's funny, and you laugh at it, and you believe it. It's a genuine connection. But it's
sad.
It's almost like you're reading Shakespeare. Now, I love Shakespeare, because that works for that. But the dialogue in this is just so overly romantic, and we are basically told that these people love each other, and we're never shown it or believe it. It's just like these people love each other because they're skipping through the meadows in slow motion to each other. It's not real. It doesn't feel like a real relationship. So I never had any connection to it in this or Revenge of the Sith, really.
No, even in Revenge of the Sith, it's kind of walks in, I'm pregnant. I know we'll talk more on that in the other day, but it's so badly forced, and again, it all comes down to the mistake of having a young Anakin in Episode 1, and then realising, shit, he's got to have kids, and I can't just let him have a one-night stand with someone.
Especially when he's like 10.
No, that's true. Unless it would have been like Jerry McCall, Star Wars version.
Yeah.
Are you ready for this, guys?
Yeah.
I don't like sand. It's coarse and rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. Not like here. Here is soft and smooth.
Awkwardly strokes Padme's arm. Look, okay, I defy any actor. You could get Daniel Day-Lewis to read that line, and no one could make
you
that
ready?
work.
I'll try and do it in a Morgan Freeman voice. I don't like sand. It's
That sounds like
coarse
Forrest
and
Gump.
rough and irritating, and it gets everywhere. Not like
You sound.
here.
It's
Go
more like, I don't like sand. Stephen Hawkins could pull that off.
Oh, but yeah. So just the whole relationship thing in this film doesn't work, and because it doesn't work, that takes up most of the movie.
Yeah.
So I think that because it's that really sort of just smacking you with a sledgehammer in the face that these characters are in love, and it's done poorly, because that's the majority of the film, I think that's probably one of the reasons why this is one of my least favourites. It has other problems as well, which we'll get into later. So that's pretty much your cast of characters. Maybe we could talk about Mace Windu, because didn't he say that he would only appear in this movie or be in the fight scene in this movie, could have a purple lightsaber?
Yes.
And I want to say fair play, because that is one beautiful lightsaber.
That is.
And then
It
he
is.
beheads Jango Fett, which is the most badass thing you've probably seen in the prequels. And then you find out that he got bad motherfucker engraved on his own lightsaber.
Oh, did he?
Really?
Yeah, he got it engraved. He said it in interviews. Now I've never known. He either got it engraved as the words "bad motherfucker" and George let him keep the hilt, or it got engraved in that Star Wars language. I've never known which, but he said he demanded it and he got it, which is great though, because it looked so awesome though, that
Hey,
lightsaber.
if you're Samuel L. Jackson, anything is possible.
Exactly, like
Yeah.
there's even a Pulp Fiction reference in bloody Captain America with him in it.
That was great, and I think I was the only one in the cinema that noticed that one. I was like just jumping up and down in the cinema, and everyone was like, "What? What's it? It's just a gravestone. What are you looking at?" But that would have been amazing if we'd have got that engraved during the filming of it, because I would have loved to have like just been like pausing like frame by frame to try and see that. But yeah, so I mean, if you're just going by like the colours of the lightsabers, up until that point, all we'd seen was red, blue, and green. So to suddenly see purple, it was pretty cool. And then I'm sure in like the EU, there's been loads of other colours. I think there's been like yellow, orange, white, dark sabers, stuff like that.
I want to see
that was pretty
a
cool to
white
see.
saber. That would just be like
yeah,
a
I remember
white
the
and a black
go on,
one
sorry. Yeah,
fighting against
if
each
you
other.
if you ever played the Force Unleashed games, I know you could get different crystals in that, and it looked really awesome. So hopefully, as the future films go on, we'll see more stuff like that. But what did you guys think of the end Geonosis battle? So this was like the first time, and George Lucas makes a big deal of this in the behind the scenes. This was the first time we'd ever seen a proper army of Jedi all at once. Did any of you guys find that cool, or were you just sort of like, meh, whatever?
When I was younger, I thought it was awesome the way Samuel L. Jackson just appeared and almost beheaded Django
Fett, wasn't it?
first. Yeah, well, he does it later, but you know, he just sticks lightsaber out and he's like, "This party's over." So they're like, "Yes." And then I just remember when I was younger, when all the lightsabers off, goes, "This is really cool." And then I kind of rewatched it a few years later, and I was like, "Well, that's a waste of Jedi, isn't it?" You know. There's not many of you, and you've been wheeled down to about 10, 15 in the space of 5 minutes.
Yeah, what's this about Jedi reflexes, and yet all of them just managed to die immediately?
And there's like one of when they're walking back, and someone dramatically like spins in the air, and Obi-Wan's like feeling her dead face.
Just that one.
As a war, it's sorry, I was say it's cool when not when the clones come in, but it's when afterwards when they take out the oil things or whatever it's meant to be.
Yeah.
I liked that little ground bit, but we don't see enough of it, and the shame is is the fact that when you see it again, it's when you work out that there was not one clone trooper outfit made in the entire prequel trilogy, that every single one of them is CGI. Because the clones are awesome, you need CGI, yes, when you're doing hundreds, thousands of them. Like, the Camino stuff I didn't really mind, as in seeing the clones. The Camino itself I didn't really like. But it was just the sense that they kind of... You're waiting for the Clone Wars and you're getting 5-10 minutes, and then you're suddenly taken off into a little room to have a little lightsaber duel or two. And like how Yoda just magically turns up. Stuff like that. It's a cool introduction, but going back to the Clone Wars again, which a lot of people say writes the prequels, which I did really enjoy. There's a 3-4 episode series arc on Geonosis, which is just incredible, and I'd have loved to have seen something like that in the film. Again, to me, this comes down to having episode 1 10 years before, because you could have easily finished episode 1 with the Clone Wars starting, have episode 2 as a Clone Wars film, and episode 3 could be the end of the Clone Wars / Darth Vader.
Yeah.
But again, it just felt something that was rushed, considering how secretive George Lucas was as well. I mean, he likes the sort of EU in that, but he banished them all doing Clone Wars stuff, because it had been mentioned in episode 4. He was so tight on it, it's just a shame to see it come into fruition, hardly be used.
Definitely, and this film, I often found myself, even still when I watch it now, confused in certain parts. Like when they start bringing up Jedi Master Cypher Dyas, I'm like, who the hell is this guy? Like, when they say he died 10 years ago, I remember when I first watched this film, I thought that it was Qui-Gon Jinn, and he'd gone under a new alias, and he was the one who'd instigated the whole clone army thing. Maybe working with Count Dooku when they say they were good friends. Or was it Sidious who went
That's what I read.
in disguise, which I guess is what it was. I know that sort of appears more in the old EU, which isn't canon anymore. But there's just a lot of stuff like that I think if you had have had that first film, and that's why I always fall hard on Phantom Menace, is that it is a pointless film. If we'd have had something that set this whole thing up, or maybe just even throw us straight into the Clone Wars. Maybe if the first scene of this film had have been where Anakin and Obi-Wan have been captured in Geonosis and the Jedi rescue them, you would have been thrown straight into the war of the Clone Wars, and you could have saw it unfold a lot more on the big screen, because that is some of the most interesting stuff. I mean, some of the shots in that last bit where the oil tankers are falling down and all the sand's like billowing up, and you see the clones like marching through the sand against the droids, that stuff's really cool. But I want to going back to the Geonosis battle, I want to take a moment of silence for the greatest Jedi ever, who sadly fell at the Battle of Geonosis, and that guy's name is Coleman Trebor, the greatest Jedi Master of all time, who single-handedly tried to take down Dooku and Jango Fett, but unfortunately was smoked down by Jango.
Sorry, carry on.
No, go on. I was just going to say, this guy was so awesome. I remember going to a Star Wars collectible shop with all the toys, and there were so many other better characters I could have bought that day, but there was a Coleman Trebor figure, and I just had to have it because that moment in the film, it's about 10 seconds long, but he will forever be remembered for that one scene.
It's literally, right, he's the closest thing to the Family Guy joke in Star Wars, because he just comes out of nowhere onto that balcony, whips out his lightsaber, and literally Jango's there like, what you doing, mate? And then he just like shoots him like 3 or 4 times, and then it's just him falling, and it just reminds me of whenever Dumbledore dies, and I really wanted like some super slow-mo of just like him falling in the air, and then just Jango just like whipped his gun away like he didn't even care. But I just won't ever forget it, and it's just his whole face. But
yeah, he's got like
legend.
a weird CGI face. Yeah.
It's just picture Family Guy Star Wars when they take the piss when Dak goes, I'm going to take on the whole Empire, and then he flies up to the actual Empire, the whole Imperial fleet, and dies. That's essentially what this person did. Fair play, he could have ended the Clone Wars like 2 years early, but it wasn't, he should have at least turned up 3 of them.
Coleman Trebor did a straight up Leroy Jenkins moment and just failed. I'm trying to think of what else we can talk about. Let's talk about the Coruscant chase at the start, if you like, because we're introduced to another bounty hunter as well as Jango Fett with Zam Wesell, which could have been an awesome character. We're shown that she's is it a Changelon she's called or something like that, where she can alter her appearance, a power she never uses. And I'm really confused because there's a moment where they enter a bar, which, by the way, that scene alone set up a whole awesome video on YouTube where they use that as the setting for lots of film crossovers, which was great to watch. But her character was really interesting, and then she's sort of just out of the movie, and I thought they could have done a lot more with her. But that chase in Coruscant just goes on for ages. I was watching it again, like you, Tate, I had to have a break. I walked out, I think I made myself a cup of tea, Like, I was in there for about 5 minutes or more, came back, the scene was still going on and they were flying around. It's just kind of unnecessary, at least to have a chase scene that long. And I don't want to refer too much to the Plinkett reviews, but one of the things that really bothers me in that scene is that stupid thing that Obi-Wan does by just diving out the window and grabbing hold of that droid, and then Anakin goes out in the speeder. Those roles should have been reversed, because that is totally an Anakin thing to do, where he's impulsive and he'll just go with it, and then Obi-Wan just sort of like slowly follows behind Sunday traffic and then pick him up.
And I want to kind of talk about the magical worms that they try and kill Padme with.
Yes,
You're a bounty hunter, you're getting paid a lot of money. Use your magical device to take out the circle in the glass, and put your gun through it and pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Then it's done. But no, we're going to send in 2 magical worms that somehow are cleanly killed, and no one else, not even the bed sheets, are damaged by the lightsaber.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that scene would have been awesome if it was, if J.J. Abrams was directing this film. Like that scene from Star Trek Into Darkness where the ship sort of pulls up and is just shooting at the building. If we'd have had like Slave 1 doing that or something with Django in it, that would have just been epic. But obviously in that scene, just Padme would just have been instantly dead and the whole saga would have had to have been rewritten.
Unless Anakin had got over his depression with a one-night stand with some like alien Twi'lek prostitute, and thus is Luke and Leia.
With that chick who dances in Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi.
Oh, poor woman. I actually found out about her EU profile. She wanted a rich life and was poured into a job by Bib Fortune. I've got no idea why I'm telling you this, but I just remember it from my fact files. And she was promised a great life in Tatooine, and then she was fed to the Rancor.
Oh god, that's See, I love that EU stuff, just like a little hints about the characters. My favourite was Jet Porkins, how he was like the greatest star pilot ever, like better than Anakin. And he just goes down straight away in the movie.
Star Wars, the only thing ever to turn a 15-second screen time into a 150-page book.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't complain though, if it was me.
So we sort of like harped on this movie quite a lot. We can talk about positives if you want. I know we've sort of hit on a few scenes with like Death of Shmi Skywalker and the scenes on Tatooine. Do you guys have any other positives before we sort of round out? Because I'm really struggling to think of what else we can talk about. I guess we could talk about the Yoda fight at the end. First time we see Yoda with the lightsaber.
Yeah, I know, but it was tacky and CGI, and man, it could have been so much better if it wasn't, hey, we need a fight at the end. Who's the one person who hasn't had a fight yet? Because everyone's got to have a turn fighting at some point. And they think, no, Mace Windu had a fight earlier on. No. Oh, Yoda, he hasn't had a fight yet. We'll have him have a fight.
And this was the first film that made Yoda completely fully CGI as well. I know since then they've re-released Episode 1 on the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
And they've CGI'd him as well, which I guess makes more sense if you sort of watching the prequels just as their own thing. But he was just rendered in CGI just so they could have that fight at the end. And there's a behind-the-scenes footage of George Lucas explaining to one of the crew members about now they have the technology to do it, and he's sort of just going off that this is going to be the first time that we see Yoda with a laser sword and just going to town, and the other guy's just nodding like, oh my god, what are you doing?
It's a shame because Yoda's kind of there, like, you know, all his wisdom and all that, fearless, the dark side, all that, but he's the one that's got his lightsaber out, and he's the one that's gone for Count Dooku before Count Dooku's, gone for him. And it's a shame because even when I was younger, I thought, okay, it's cool, but I was never really phased. Like, I liked the Episode 3 one because I felt like there were stakes there, but I was never really bothered by the Episode 2 duel, even at a young age, which is quite shocking because, as a 6-year-old, I should be absolutely mental on seeing a 3-foot green thing jumping round walls like Spider-Man.
But to be honest, there was no danger and nothing at risk, and it's probably going to be exactly the same with the other fight. The problem with prequels is you know who's going to live, you kind of have an idea on who's going to die. So it's very difficult to plan something out where, hey, look, Count Dooku, he isn't in the sequels, therefore he's going to die within these 3 films. Yoda, he survives, so he's going to live through this fight. Same with any situation with Obi-Wan and Anakin, you know they're going to get through. No matter what happens, there will be some kind of Deus Ex Machina to save them.
To me, that was a bigger problem in Revenge of the Sith because that was the initial setup movie. So I was sort of watching that movie, even at the time when I watched it, going like, "Well, he's not in the original, so he's gonna die." And everything you just said, that was more of a problem for me in that. But I do remember the initial hype of that Yoda fight though in the cinema, where he's cut down Anakin and Obi-Wan's on the ground, and then you see that silhouette and the shadow and the faint sound of the walking stick, and I do remember the audience being really into it at that scene. And I even know some cinemas in the US, I think, that scene got a standing ovation when Yoda whipped the lightsaber out, but I think that was just
America.
America initial hype of seeing the lightsaber fight, but I think over time you're sort of looking at it like, what was the point of this? And this is a big thing when I keep saying about Darth Maul. Do you think that Dooku could have been switched with Darth Maul, and then you could have had them taking on Maul again at the end? Obi-Wan could have been filled with rage again, and then Maul could have escaped for a second time, and then he would have been the one who's decapitated at the start of Episode 3.
I don't know. See, I like the Dooku aspect of being the political leader type. As boring as the politics is, it was quite interesting to a degree with him. I would have liked it too dynamic, but because of the rule of two, it would have been impossible unless they'd have had Darth Maul as some like Inquisitor type person. But I'd have loved to have seen a sort of 2-on-2 lightsaber duel, because we haven't really ever seen that. It's probably be overkill, but there's a lot of dynamic which they could have done. But going back to the Yoda stuff, I mean, when he comes in the shadows and stuff, the way you describe it then, to me, that's how I'm praying that Luke Skywalker turns up in Episode 7, because they've kept Luke so quiet. His reveal is going to be the selling point of the film to me. And I can just picture Luke coming out of his beard, full robes, and just like, I don't know, like force pushing Kylo Ren into a tree or something absolutely incredible that's going to like give everyone goosebumps. So it would have been interesting to see the Yoda fight for the first time at the age of now. But I think, again, as Tayte was saying, there's no stakes there, whereas going into the future, we don't have a clue what's going to happen.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm struggling to think of anything else we can talk about. I do want to say that this movie absolutely is the worst we've ever seen C-3PO. The humour really doesn't hit for me, especially in that Geonosis battle where it just keeps cutting to them and he's on the conveyor belt and R2's putting him together.
Oh.
In fact, it's almost completely unnecessary in this movie.
And R2-D2 can now fly.
Oh my, yeah. Oh, I hate that. I hate that so much. I hate it every time I see it in Clone Wars. I hate it in this. And the annoying thing is that he only gave him that power during that goddamn conveyor belt scene, the droid factory scene.
Yeah.
And the characters are really unnecessary in that scene. The only thing R2 does is just stop the thing, and he could have done that without any flying around or anything like that. So, yeah, I think we've pretty much just done everything we can on this movie. So if you guys sort of want to close out with either any positives or just sum up your thoughts on what you think of Attack of the Clones.
No, that perfectly sums up the film.
Yeah, pretty much.
Get ready for Episode 3, because this time he turns into Darth Vader. Inserts a thumbs up note.
Yeah.
With this film, it it's impossible to explain. It's horrible in context of Star Wars. Maybe if it was a standalone film, it might have done better. If they'd taken away the Star Wars tag and gone, here it's a love movie in space, maybe that would have done better. I don't know. Let's just say that there were better films in the Star Wars franchise, as in every other film in the Star Wars franchise.
Put it this way, one final thing. Imagine waiting 16 years of your life to see The Phantom Menace and being disappointed, and then you have to wait 3 years for it to be redeemed. You are still waiting.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What are you talking about? I was completely made when Jar Jar gave emergency powers to the Emperor and just basically instigated every single thing in the Star Wars universe.
Another killer line. The most dead-eyed Palpatine you'll ever see. I love politics.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
I thought it was going to be, ooh, Misa passed the things on to the Senate.
How does Jar Jar even get emergency powers? Wouldn't every single person have to do a vote on it? It took 400 MPs to vote to bomb Syria. So surely it would take every member, not just Naboo, to declare emergency powers.
Hold on, they just went, Jar Jar in charge now. Everyone collectively in the audience all went, no! At the same time, but it was way too late.
Oh, it's like poetry, it rhymes. If I'm going to sum up, this is probably my least favourite one. It's probably tied with Phantom Menace in all honesty, but I do think that Phantom Menace has a few more key set pieces, which is a shame because I think Attack of the Clones had a lot going for it. I think it could have developed a lot more, but as we said, because you have a pretty much pointless first film, a lot of the stuff's glossed over and not really developed all that much. It probably is in the EU, I'm sure, but if you're going by the films, which you should, there's a lot of wasted potential in here. Terrible love plot throughout the film with pretty much bad acting throughout the film, poorly written, and it's just a shame because towards the end you do get some good action. There's maybe one or two good scenes on Tatooine in the middle of the film, but that's not enough to save the film. It's just mostly forgettable. I thought that when I first saw it, and I still kind of think that now. So yeah, that'll do it for our review of Attack of the Clones. Be sure to come back next time where we'll be reviewing Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I think we're probably all in agreement that's probably the best one of the prequels.
Yep.
Lot to talk about in that one. Be sure to rate, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think of Attack of the Clones or the prequels or anything to do with Star Wars, because as we said, this is Star Wars month. We want you to get involved and just start talking about the Star Wars saga. You can find us at Facebook at facebook.com/cinemasavvy. We're on Twitter at cinema_savvy, and we're also at Letterboxd at cinema_savvy as well. So yeah, that'll do it. I don't think we're going to end off with our Poggle the Lesser impressions. I'd like to save everyone the embarrassment of that, but I am going to go now and watch that 10-hour Poggle the Lesser video because he's an amazing character. So yeah, that'll do it. Until next time, thanks for listening.